Welcome to Fear-Free Childbirth Podcast with Alexia Leachman, the weekly 9-month podcast to help parents-to-be look forward to their fear-free childbirth. Alexia is a pregnancy and head trash clearance coach and the author of Fear-Free Childbirth, How to Have a Stress-Free Pregnancy and a Positive, Pain-Free Birth. As a mum who's had 2 fear-free and pain-free births, Alexia wants to share with you how she overcame her pregnancy and childbirth fears so that you can look forward to having a fear-free birth too. Over the 9-month life of this podcast, Alexia will be sharing some real-life stories from mums and dads, insights into the latest childbirth research, inspiring tales from birth professionals, and some tips and techniques for clearing your fears and stresses. If you would like to receive a free chapter from her book, then head over to fearfreechildbirth.com, where you can also sign up for her email series, How to Have a Stress-Free Pregnancy. But now, it's time for the show.
Hello and welcome back to the Fear-Free Childbirth Podcast. This is me, your host, Alexia Leachman, and thank you so much for joining me today. Now, on today's show, I want to talk about the lies that we've been told about childbirth. Yep, we have been lied to about childbirth. So let me put it back to you. What do you know about childbirth? Now, I'd imagine that if you've had a baby, then you've probably got a pretty good idea about childbirth because you've been through it. But if you haven't, then what do you know about childbirth? And I would pretty much bet that if you ask any woman who has yet to have a baby what she knows about childbirth, you're probably going to be hearing things like, oh, well, it happens in a hospital. Oh, it hurts. Definitely hurts. It hurts so much that you need drugs, you need injections, and there's doctors and nurses, and it can go on for days, and it's a nightmare, and it's dangerous, you can die. You know, all this kind of stuff. Wouldn't surprise me. And in fact, this used to be what I used to think about childbirth until I started educating myself about it. But so why do we think that this is what childbirth is all about? Where do we get these ideas from? You know, this is crazy. Well, so when I thought about where I learned about childbirth, I learned about it from, the movies, because obviously we get all our best education from things like movies. And of course, school. Yes, we've all had that session in school where we've been shown a video of a woman giving birth in a hospital with blood and everywhere. Yes, we've all had that, I'm sure. And then there's TV shows, of course, where it's all a bit dramatic and there's lots of shouting and stuff going on. And then friends and family that are probably only too happy to share their usual probably horror stories of birth experiences as opposed to maybe sort of the pleasant ones, because the pleasant ones don't normally surface, do they? So, yeah, we're getting our sense of childbirth before we've actually had a baby from these really interesting sources that actually aren't very reliable. Because if we just go back and dig a bit deeper with these ones, let's just sort of look at the TV shows and the movies for a minute. Well, they're all about drama. They are not about education. So, you know, for a TV show to be compelling and for the movie to be compelling, they're going to want to show a load of drama. So that's going to be a hospital scene. There'll be loads of doctors and nurses. There'll probably be some white coats thrown in, probably some machines, some fiddling, a bit of beeping, all that drama. There'll be some shouting. There'll be push, 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 and the mama pushing, and there'll be all this pain. And, you know, that's kind of makes a good dramatic scene, you know, because the alternative might be if you were to film a mum, let's say, giving birth at home by candlelight with her husband and a midwife knitting in the corner, all very calm and not a lot going on, then, you know, people would pretty much switch off because that's not drama, right? That's kind of, it could be very normal and real, but it's not drama and it won't make it onto the TV shows. So, you know, we have to realise that actually this idea of childbirth that we've been presented with is filtered quite badly to really show maybe the more dramatic aspects of it. So what about school? Well, let's think about school. So how old are we when we see those videos at school? Well, I think I was 13, 14 when I saw that. Quite an impressionable age, I think we can say. And maybe the objectives of the people showing us these videos while we're at school isn't necessarily to educate us about how childbirth can be, but maybe it's more to do with, we don't really want these girls getting pregnant right now because teenage pregnancy would be a nightmare for them and society. So, hey, let's scare them to death about this and just show them a really scary version of childbirth. Because I don't know about you, but when I saw those videos, I was put off sex for quite a long time and didn't want to go anywhere near childbirth. And that was a huge thing for me. I did not want kids because I saw that damn video that they showed me at school. So I think that school video's got a lot to answer for, but certainly I don't think their objective at that point is to really educate about what childbirth can be like, because let's face it, we're not very close to being in a position where we will be giving birth, hopefully. Really, we should be getting that kind of education, maybe in our 20s, where we really are at that point where we could start to consider having children, and this is something that actually could be very real for us. But there isn't anything around for us at that point. But anyway, back to where we get our ideas of what childbirth is like. Well, there's friends and family. So we might be really lucky at this point and hear lots of positive tales of really nice births and calm births and successful, happy, positive experiences. But mostly we tend to hear the horror stories, the drama stories, the negative ones, the nightmares. And the reason for that is because a lot of women that go through those experiences do have a need to express it because they're trying to deal with it, they're trying to cope with it, and they just want to talk to somebody about it. And so we hear those stories more often than not. And certainly as I've been doing this podcast and doing a lot more work with sort of people around pregnancy, and I've asked those to share with me their positive stories, and we've got some really great positive stories coming soon on the podcast because I've been getting my mic out and I've been getting women to share. So you can look forward to some really great positive stories soon on the podcast. But yes, when I've been speaking to them, they've been saying, you know what, I don't dare share my story because I feel guilty that mine was okay. Or when I do share it, people clearly don't want to hear it and they just cut me off and start talking about something else. And so there's really this thing where those that have got a positive story to tell maybe don't feel like they can share it, maybe feel like they're gloating in some ways, and they're not. Why can't they share this amazing, wonderful experience that they've had? And it's always those negative stories that tend to come through that we tend to hear. And so we really are, when you think about those main sources of education that we're getting around childbirth, they're not reliable, they're filtered, or they're presenting an aspect of childbirth that really isn't about helping to educate us. It's more about there's another agenda going on. And so the problem is what all this leads to, what we believe, what does that mean when it comes to how we actually think childbirth is? Because that cocktail is quite damaging, because what it does teach us about childbirth is this. It teaches us that labour and childbirth will be painful. That's what we believe to be the case. We see it everywhere, we hear it. So we just think that's what it is. That it's going to hurt, it's going to be a nightmare, and I've just got to suck it up and see. This is just what childbirth is, and it's not going to last long. Hopefully it won't be days, and that'll be fine, and kids are amazing, and I've just got to get through it. And so that's what we just believe, that this is a non-negotiable fact, that is it. That's just how it is. And then the second thing that we are taught is that childbirth is a medical situation. So you've got to be in hospital, right? If it's a medical thing, you do that in hospital, right? So, and that's why a lot of babies are born in hospital, because this is a medical situation, and a pregnant woman is ill, right? Well, no. Again, this is not necessarily the case. Sure, there are some childbirths that are medically sensitive and that the woman is in a compromised state of health and therefore needs some additional care and support. But for the most part, it is not a medical situation. And then finally, the third thing is that childbirth requires medical assistance. So you need the drugs, you need the injections, you need all the tools, you need the machines, you need the instruments. Basically the woman can't do it on her own because there's all this other stuff that she needs, which is why she needs to be in a hospital. So again, this is wrong. This is all wrong. Childbirth does not require medical assistance. And of course, when I'm talking about this, I mean, a normal, healthy mum having a baby. I'm not talking about situations where the mum is very ill or the mum has got certain conditions that mean she needs additional care. I'm just talking about normal, regular childbirth with a normal, healthy woman. And so all this, for me, I find it really, really sad that as women, we're conditioned since our school days, pretty much, that childbirth is not something we can do on our own, but we need help with it. We need medical help. It's got to be done in hospital. And, we just can't do this. And essentially, we're failures as women, which just seems a bit mad because on the one hand, biology lessons are teaching us that women, not men, are built to conceive and give birth. And if it wasn't for us, then the race wouldn't survive, So we've got this idea on one hand that we're the ones that create life. And if it wasn't for us, then the race wouldn't survive. And that is what we're built to do. And yet popular culture, on the other hand, is bombarding us with these messages that lead us to believe that actually we're not capable of doing what our bodies were built to do. And in fact, we're just not good enough. We're complete failures and we need medical help. We need drugs. We need doctors. We need all those machines because we can't do it on our own. My goodness, just think about that for a minute and how damaging that is, because this is not only that those two messages are very much in conflict, but there's a double whammy here as well, because the more we are led to believe that childbirth requires medical assistance and that it hurts and that it's painful and all those things that I've just talked about, the more we think that, the more we believe it, the more likely it is that it will be, and the less likely we are to believe that it's a natural process that can happen perfectly adequately on its own. And that's the tragedy here, is that this what's going on in our society everywhere and what we're being fed is just not helping. It really isn't helping. And so we end up being fearful, we end up being scared, we end up thinking it's going to hurt, we end up thinking all that, and actually it's fear that creates those nightmare scenarios within childbirth. If you want to learn more about how fear does impact childbirth and how it can make pain within childbirth, then listen to one of my other podcasts about that, and I've already talked about that a lot. But if we can get rid of the fear, if we can stop this story that keeps being propagated everywhere, that is just downright lies, then we could all have much more positive birth experiences. And I don't think enough emphasis is placed on how important a positive birth experience is for a woman, because if a woman can give birth and see that as a really positive experience, then she is more likely to avoid things like postnatal depression. But if she does have a really positive experience that isn't full of fear, that maybe she does have an experience that is very quick, very easily, very smooth going, where she doesn't experience much pain at all. Maybe it's just at the point where the baby's head comes out, but other than that, it's not a painful experience. And in fact, she feels euphoric when she's given birth. She feels high on endorphins. She sees the whole thing as this incredibly positive and empowering experience. Then the impact of that and the ripple effect of that throughout, society, and I don't want to sort of over-egg this, but really, if you think about the impact of postnatal depression and what that has on her ability to be a great mother, on her parenting, on how the baby's affected by that, how the family's affected by that, and how you flip that, and how a mother who feels so positively about her birth, how she feels about mothering, how confident she feels about her ability to be a mum, and how that can then ripple through the family in such positive ways. There really needs to be more that we can do to try and help these mums-to-be to have these brilliantly positive birth experiences, because the negative births can be at the root of so many problems. I've got an interview coming soon with a brilliant guest who really talks about how a traumatic birth experience for mum and baby can really lead to a lot of mental and anxiety problems later on in life for the baby. And so we really don't talk about that aspect of childbirth much, the emotional impact on the baby and on mum of having an experience that maybe doesn't go that brilliantly. And so all these lies that we're hearing all the time about childbirth that is creating fear around this magical moment is really, really damaging. And so the best thing that we can do, especially if you're a pregnant mum, is to really just educate yourself and just start nipping this stuff in the bud. Because if you can do that, go onto YouTube, seek out some beautiful birth stories and birth experiences. There's some beautiful home births out there, lovely water births to look at. There's some lovely blogs out there that looks like there's the positive birth movement. There's the Birth Without Fear blog that's got some really great stuff on it as well. So just seek out some of that stuff. Read some good books. There's Ina Gaskin's Childbirth Without Fear that's really well worth reading as well. To really get your head around what it can be like. And that can really work wonders in shifting your perspective and taking the fear out of this momentous experience in your life and doing everything you can to make it as positive as possible. I hope that today's podcast was useful and that you found something that you think, oh yes, I'm going to go and check that out. I'm going to go read that book. I'm going to go on YouTube and have a look at something. I'm going to go and check out this blog. Go and hit Google, see what you can find. And I hope that just hearing what I've said today is maybe encourage you to maybe consider that what you're seeing on the TV and everywhere isn't necessarily how it is, and that there is a better way out there. So I hope it's been useful. If you've enjoyed listening to today's podcast, I'd really appreciate a review on iTunes or Stitcher. And of course, I have got my How to Have a Stress-Free Pregnancy free email series that you can come and get from the fearfreechildbirth.com website. Hopefully there's a load of really juicy stuff in there for you to have a fear-free childbirth, I hope. And of course, I've got some brilliant guests coming up. I've got some best-selling authors on lots of childbirth stuff. I've got some really interesting expert guests as well coming up. So make sure you hit the subscribe button on wherever you're listening to this, whether it's iTunes or Stitcher, so you can keep tabs on what's coming soon. And if there's any particular subject or questions that you have that you want to hear more about, if you think there's some experts that I think I should be chatting to and getting them on the show, then please don't hesitate to send me an email and let me know. But also, if you know someone with a positive birth story that you think would love to come on the podcast and share their story to inspire other women, then equally get them to email me here at alexia@fearfreechildbirth.com. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in. You've just been listening to Alexia Leachman from the Fear Free Childbirth podcast. If you enjoyed the show, she'd really love it if you left a review on iTunes or Stitcher or shared it with a friend. And don't forget, to get a free chapter from her book, head over to fearfreechildbirth.com to get your copy, as well as finding other episodes in this podcast and more about how Alexia can help you with pregnancy and birth preparation coaching. Until next time.